Okay, so get this right. Imagine you're asking an AI assistant a question like, what's the capital of France?
Hmm.
It's a simple question.
Right.
And it confidently tells you Marseille. Like, pretty big fail,
Yeah,
right?
big mistake.
It actually happens more than you think, and it all comes down to how AI systems learn from the web.
It's true. I mean, a lot of AI out there is kind of stuck reading the web like it's just one long text message. It misses like all those visual cues, all the stuff we take for granted, like headings, tables, even images.
Yeah.
Just a sea of
Just like
words.
trying to understand a joke, but you don't get the punchline.
Exactly.
And that's where this research paper comes in, right? It's called HtmlRAG.
Yeah.
It's about reinventing how AI learns from the web by letting it see the structure of a website.
That's it. The paper actually digs into, this concept called retrieval-augmented generation, or RAG, as they call it. And it's basically a way for AI to access like external info, websites in this case, to answer your questions. But even with a RAG, we're stuck in this plain text trap, I guess they call it, where all the formatting gets stripped away.
And the researchers are saying that's a huge problem because websites, I mean, think about it. They're designed to convey meaning through their structure.
Exactly. Think about like a table on a website.
Right.
It's total gibberish in plain text. Yeah. Right? Like the AI loses the relationships between the data. It makes it so much harder to understand what it's reading.
No wonder it's giving us these crazy answers.
Right.
So HTMLRA, this is trying to fix this by letting the AI read the website in their native HTML format. With all the formatting intact, that's pretty revolutionary.
It is. I mean, the LLMs, the large language models that power AI systems, are already pretty good at understanding HTML because they've encountered it during their training.
So it's like we're finally tapping into this hidden potential of AI
Yeah.
to understand the web the way we do.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling there's a catch here. Websites are huge GE in HTML form.
Right.
It just seems like that'd be a big challenge, processing all that information.
Yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I think one of the biggest hurdles for HtmlRAG was, figuring out how to reduce the size of the HTML input without losing any crucial information.
So how did they solve that? Did they just like randomly start chopping out pieces of code?
No, no, no. They actually came up with a pretty smart two-step process to kind of declutter the HTML,
Yeah.
get rid of all the stuff that the AI doesn't need, like JavaScript or CSS style sheets.
Okay.
Kind of like taking out the recycling before a big dinner party, I guess.
Makes sense. But even after cleaning, there's still a lot of HTML left, right?
Yeah, so that's where the second step comes in, pruning. This is where it gets really interesting. They actually use AI itself to figure out which parts of the HTML are most relevant to your question and then keep those.
Wait, so the AI is cleaning up after itself. That's pretty meta.
Exactly. And it does this by using something called text embedding.
Right.
It's kind of a way of representing words and phrases as these numerical vectors, kind of like coordinates in a multidimensional space. And the idea is that words with similar meanings will have vectors that are close together in that space.
Okay, I'm following so far, but how does that actually help prune the HTML?
So in the pruning step, the system is basically comparing the text embeddings of your question to the text embeddings of different chunks of HTML, right? And the chunks with the highest similarity scores, meaning the ones whose meanings are closest to your question, those are kept. And all the less relevant stuff is pruned away.
So it's like using a metal detector to find the most valuable nuggets of information.
Yeah, exactly. But what if the relevant info is kind of buried deep within a complex HTML structure, That's where the second part of this pruning process comes in, using something they call a generative model.
Okay, intriguing. Tell me more about this generative model.
Think of it as another kind of AI, a language model that's been specifically trained to understand the relationships between different elements in HTML. It can identify and preserve the most relevant HTML blocks based on your query, even if they're nested, deep within the structure.
So it's like the generative model has this deeper understanding of how websites are put together.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's like giving the AI a blueprint, like a map of the website, so it knows exactly where to find the information it needs.
So this two-step pruning process, this is pretty sophisticated, right? But how do we know if it actually works? Did they put it to the test?
Oh, they did. And the results are really impressive. They tested HtmlRAG on 6 different question answering tasks, which are like standard benchmarks in AI research. And guess what? It consistently outperformed systems that were stuck using just plain text.
Okay, so it's not just a theory. It actually works in practice.
Yeah.
That's exciting. But, before we get too ahead of ourselves, I want to dig into those test results a bit more. What kind of questions were they asking? And how much better did HtmlRAG perform?
So, for example, they used a dataset called HotpotQA, which focuses on multi-hop questions. These are questions that require pulling information from multiple sources to get the answer, like putting together a puzzle.
Those sound challenging. How did HtmlRAG do?
ACIBM. On HotpotQA, HtmlRAG got an accuracy of 30.53%, while the systems using just plain text only managed 25.16%. That's a big jump.
Wow, that is a big difference. And that was just on one of the data sets, right?
Right. Across all 6 datasets they tested, HtmlRAG consistently came out on top. It really seems like being able to understand the HTML formatting gives AI a real edge in understanding these complex
This
questions.
is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
It's like we finally gave AI a pair of glasses so it can actually see what's on the web instead of fumbling around in the dark.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. This breakthrough could completely change how we interact with information online.
All right, hold that thought. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back and explore what this all means for you and how we search for information online. Okay, so we've been talking about how HtmlRAG helps AI see the web more like a human does. But paint me a picture. How could this actually change things for us in the real world?
Well, right now when you use a search engine, you type in some keywords and you get back a bunch of links.
Right.
And then it's up to you to go through all of them and figure out what's relevant.
Right.
But imagine if you could ask your search engine, these really specific questions.
Okay.
Like, show me the chart on this page that compares the features of these 2 products, or what are the key takeaways from this research paper?
Hold on. So instead of just getting a list of websites, I could actually get specific answers or insights pulled, directly from the content itself.
Exactly.
That'd be amazing.
And those answers would be more reliable, because the AI would actually have this deeper understanding of the context and the relationships between different pieces of information on the page.
So it's like having a research assistant built right into my search engine. Sign me up. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Could there be any downsides to giving AI this much access to HTML? Could somebody use this for bad stuff? Scraping sensitive information, manipulating websites.
Yeah, those are definitely valid concerns.
Yeah.
And it's really crucial that we address them as this technology develops.
Right.
Developers are already exploring ways to implement stricter security measures, access controls, limiting the types of websites and information that AI systems can access.
That's reassuring. It sounds like we need to find that balance between using this power for good while also protecting against the potential risks.
Absolutely. And remember, this technology is still, in its early stages. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible.
Right. So the research paper you shared talked about 6 different tests they ran with HtmlRAG. Were there any findings that really stood out to you?
One that was really interesting is that HtmlRAG did incredibly well on a task called ACE-QA. And this involves answering questions that could have multiple valid answers depending on the context.
Oh, interesting. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. Imagine you ask, what's the best programming language? That's super ambiguous, right? It totally depends on what you want to do with that language.
Right.
HtmlRAG was able to outperform other AI systems in understanding those nuances and actually giving more relevant answers. It could read between the lines.
That makes a lot of sense. The HTML is giving the AI more information to work with, allowing it to kind of zero in on what the user is really asking.
Exactly. And this has some really fascinating implications for how we design websites in the future.
Interesting.
If we want AI systems to understand our content better, we might need to think more carefully about how we structure and present information using HTML. It's almost like HTML is becoming a language that both humans and AI can understand.
That's a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
But every technology has its limitations, right? Were there any areas where HtmlRAG didn't perform as well?
The researchers did mention that, their methods for pruning the HTML could still be improved. And they also noted that the performance of HtmlRAG is dependent on the capabilities of the underlying language model. So as language models continue to get better, HtmlRAG will get even better too.
So basically, as language models get smarter, so will HtmlRAG.
Precisely. And as language models with even larger context windows become available, HtmlRAG will be able to process even larger and more complex websites. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. This has been an incredible deep dive so far. I feel like we're on the verge of this huge shift in how we interact with information online.
It's a rapidly evolving field, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
All right. Let's take a moment to kind of let all that sink in. When we come back, we'll wrap up this deep dive by exploring what this all means for you, the listener. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from AI hallucinations to text embeddings to the potential for AI to finally see the web the way we do. But what does this all really mean for our everyday lives?
Well, we've seen how HtmlRAG is addressing some pretty major limitations of AI systems, right? Like their tendency to, just make stuff up because they're missing that crucial context.
Right.
HtmlRAG could lead to a future where, we can get more accurate and nuanced and insightful answers from AI, which is super exciting.
It's like we're moving from an AI that can just kind of skim the surface to AI that can really dive deep and understand the richness of information on the web.
Exactly.
But with any new tech, there are always those questions about the potential downsides, right?
Right.
What should we be thinking about as this technology develops?
Well, one thing we touched on is security and privacy, right? As AI systems get better at processing information, we need to make sure that they're not accessing or using sensitive data in ways we don't want them to. Think about personal medical records or financial information.
Right.
We need really strong safeguards in place to protect that data.
Absolutely. And I imagine there are also concerns about manipulation. Could somebody with bad intentions exploit HtmlRAG to trick AI systems or spread misinformation?
Yeah, that's definitely something that researchers are thinking about right now. I mean, imagine somebody creating a website that's, deliberately designed to mislead an AI system. We need to develop algorithms that are smart enough to, detect that kind of manipulation and ensure that the AI isn't being fooled.
So it's almost like an arms race between those who want to use AI for good and those who might try to exploit it for their own gain. It sounds like a lot of responsibility falls on the developers and researchers to make sure this technology is used ethically and safely.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about how we as a society choose to use it.
Right.
We need to be having these conversations now so we can kind of guide the development of AI in a direction that benefits everyone.
And this brings up a question that I think a lot of people are wondering about. As AI gets more and more sophisticated, will it eventually replace humans in certain roles? Will we become so reliant on AI to make sense of the world for us that we lose some of our own critical thinking skills?
That's a big question. And I think the answer is that AI should be seen as a tool to augment human intelligence, not to replace it.
Right.
We need to focus on education, critical thinking skills, so that people can, understand how AI works and evaluate the information it's giving them.
So it's not about blindly trusting AI, but about learning to use it effectively and responsibly.
Exactly. Think of it this way. HtmlRAG could be giving everyone a superpower, this ability to instantly access and understand vast amounts of information. But with any superpower, there comes great responsibility, right?
Right.
It's up to us to use it wisely.
That's a great analogy. And it sounds like, HtmlRAG could be a real game changer. But it's just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to the future of AI.
It is, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about, and I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Yeah, I think we only scratched the surface of this topic, but hopefully this has given you, a better understanding of how AI is evolving and what it might mean for the future.
And if you want to learn more, we'll be sure to include links to the research paper and other resources in the show notes.
And as always, we love hearing from you.
Yes.
If you have any, thoughts or questions about HtmlRAG, please share them with us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions.